for what we really need, which is a strong statewide policy as the best option.
I think that's a great overview by Maura. I want to emphasize that I don't think we would have gotten the statewide bill if not local governments hadn't gone first. That's where the action is on plastics issues, from the bottom up, and you can craft really good local bills, and then the state pays attention. And the nice thing about that for you and I is it's easier for us to access our local elected officials. You just go to the local government as opposed to going to Trenton or Washington, D.C. But I describe this New Jersey bill, which I call the plastic trifecta, because it deals with bags and polystyrene and straws. It's the strongest in the country now because it prohibits both paper and plastic bags. And I think it should inspire the federal government to act. So I want to mention there's a very important bill that has a lot of similarity to this New Jersey law. I love calling it a law and not a bill, but there's a bill in Congress that you should all know about called the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. That bill puts fees on bags, plastic straws only upon request, ban on some polystyrene food packaging, national bottle bill, which we really need to reduce litter and boost recycling, and then also has something called extended producer responsibility, which requires the companies that make all the packaging to figure out what to do with it so it doesn't fall on the shoulders of taxpayers. So I want to share with you those bill numbers. It's US, so this is federal government. So it's US Senate Bill 3263, and it's House Bill 5845. Here's the shocking thing. Only one member of Congress from New Jersey has signed on as a co-sponsor. So we should thank House member Bonnie Watson-Coleman for being a co-sponsor, but we've got to get the rest of the New Jersey members of Congress, including Senator Cory Booker and Senator Menendez, to sign on as co-sponsors. So that's your homework for tonight. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of homework assignments, but if you are inspired by the action that the state of New Jersey took recently, please help us pass the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act at the federal level.
Okay. Yeah, I can put a link in there if we need one. Yeah, I agree. You know, this campaign and this win came like a lot of bills where if you can't get it done at the state level, you go down to that local level and get your municipality or county or city to pass it. And our volunteers were great and went out there and passed a few of these, and that shows that, you know, one, it's doable, and, you know, the sky doesn't fall after you pass it, and then two, it makes confusing uncertainty for industry, and they say, hey, we'd rather not have all these different bills. Let's get one state level bill, and so that's helpful too. So.
Thank you. So I'm going to move on to another question. So how are plastics and climate change issues connected? So what's the connection between the two?
So plastics are made from chemicals and from fracked gas. Historically, plastics were made from chemicals and oil. I assume most people know what hydrofracking is. It's a very dangerous type of natural gas extraction from the earth. And when you do hydrofracking, you have a byproduct that's vented into the atmosphere called ethane. So there's now an effort underway to capture that ethane, send it by pipeline to new facilities called ethane cracker plants. Kind of a funny name, right? Ethane cracker. And they're called cracker plants because they take the ethane and they heat it to a really high temperature and it cracks, and it becomes ethylene, which is a building block of plastic. there are hundreds of these proposals, none in New Jersey, but in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Ohio, Texas, and Louisiana. And if plastic production grows as is currently planned, by 2030, the greenhouse gas emissions would be the equivalent of the greenhouse gas emissions that are released by 295 coal-fired power plants. So plastic production emits a lot of carbon, a greenhouse gas, into the atmosphere. And those of us in the environmental community have been working really hard to shut down coal plants. And we don't want it to be replaced with carbon emissions from plastic production. What's happening in the whole fossil fuel industry is, as we are making progress on building clean renewable energy projects like solar and wind, the demand for fossil fuel is reducing. As we make progress on cleaner transportation options, the demand for fossil fuel is diminished. So the fossil fuel industry looks at plastic production as their plan B. And a lot of these cracker facilities emit not only a massive amount of hazardous air contaminants, but also carbon. I call them super emitters of carbon. So we cannot solve the climate change problem without significantly reducing the generation and the use of plastic. So we think of plastics as an ocean issue, and it really is, but it's also a climate change issue and an environmental justice issue.
Right, and I also want to add that along with plastic production being a huge emitter of carbon emissions, it's also kind of an economic driver for more single-use behavior. And when you apply, and that kind of trickles out to other behaviors, other single-use behaviors. And there's something that I think is interesting called consumption-based carbon emissions, where it's looking at all of the carbon emissions associated with the full life cycle of all of the products that we use. So it can include plastic, but it can also include, basically everything. And when we continue to kind of rely on this single-use habit behavior, which is driven by the plastics industry because of its role in the economic, cycle of it all. But it also comes down to our, the single-use behaviors that's built into the economy. And so I think that's another perspective where it's plastics, but it also trickles out to consumption as a whole and how we need to rethink that.
Okay, I actually do have a quick follow-up question. So you mentioned how most plastics are made out of chemicals and like byproducts of fossil fuels, but what about things we see advertised in everyday life that are talking about being 100% plant-based plastic or like 100% recycled plastic? Are those any better?
Not really. We at Surfrider are still hopeful that maybe one day there will be a product, but so far just avoid those. And I saw the question in the chat too. There's a lot of products claiming biodegradability, or they use a bunch of different words, and they're made of corn. But the one problem is a lot of those products made from corn, once they go to a recycling center, they actually gum up the works and mess up the actual recyclable plastics because it's a different material, right? So you can't mix them. So it screws that up. And then the bigger problem is people think, oh, it's biodegradable, problem solved. I don't have to change my behavior. This product is going to biodegrade. And it doesn't biodegrade. That's the other problem. Most of these products need to be sent to a specific facility to biodegrade, and that just never happens because who's going to sort it out and find that facility? So those, we just say just avoid those for now. They're not up to snuff. I don't know what the other folks think.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I mean, if you're all confused about plastics recycling, you're not alone. And you're confused because for the last 30 years, the companies that make plastics slap a recycled logo on it, you know, the iconic 3-arrow chasing logo. And putting a recycling logo on a product doesn't mean that it's recyclable. So in my own home, I only recycle products that are number 1 or number 2 plastic. If you look at the bottom, there'll be little numbers down there. All of the other plastic just does not get recycled because there's not a market for it. Sometimes number 5 is, but even lately that's not getting recycled. I strongly recommend that you watch the movie called The Story of Plastic. And that details how so much plastic is exported to other countries. And if you can't get access to The Story of Plastic, I know it's on the Discovery Channel and Apple, a couple apps. A similar movie is called Plastic Wars, and that's on pbs.org. It's just a 1-hour segment on Frontline. And that shows massive amount of plastics being exported to other countries where it creates problems over there. So fundamentally, as Maura said, we need to reduce our use of not only plastic, but all single-use products whenever possible. And I just want to share some statistics, and I think these illustrate why I spend my whole life working on plastic pollution issue. We are a throwaway society. The United States makes up 4.25% of the world's total population, but the United States uses 70% of the world's energy. We consume 24% of the world's natural resources. And then, not surprisingly, we create 12% of the world's solid waste. And this simply is not sustainable. Plastic is a notable problem, but across the board, anything we can do to reduce the use of single-use products will really go a long way.
And I want to just continue on because I read that comment more closely. Yes, I mean, if you need garbage bags, I mean, I use garbage bags. The best thing you can do is to get that post-consumer bag because at least that's using some recycled content. But I use everything. I mean, I try not to order much online, but anything that comes on, in Amazon, I use that for garbage too. So I know that's an issue, but hope that helped.
Okay, thank you. So next question. So what would you say to businesses in New Jersey that are worried or confused about what to think about this plastic ban bill?
I mean, I would say they have until 2022, so they have some time, which is good. And some products are becoming more available. You know, we with our Ocean Friendly Restaurants program, didn't used to want to tell our restaurants that they had to use those paper straws because when we started, they were hard to find and very expensive. But now they're way more available and the prices come down. So these things will happen. You know, the prices should come down on things as the laws change. And I'd say look at the other costs. You know, if their costs are going up, we have costs to our society. Cost to our health from from plastic pollution, and the cost of running all this recycling and cleanups and all that stuff. So there's two sides to that.
Yeah, I would say this is the way that business is going. It's already started and it's only going to be more so. Or the Rethink Disposable has worked with businesses in several states. It's one of our national programs to help restaurants mainly adopt waste prevention practices. And like Matt said, we never recommend switching to an alternative disposable product because it's just not cost effective for businesses. But the opposite, if they're implementing waste prevention practices, including bring your own bag policies, including straws by request policies, as well as many others, these practices actually help businesses save thousands of dollars annually, and prevent tons of waste from entering the waste stream. There's one restaurant that I worked with in Montclair that just did a straws by request policy, and they saved around $2,000 annually just by making that one change. They didn't have to buy anything different. They didn't have to, they just, changed that one thing. And so, these can be not just, good for the environment, but also cost effective for businesses.
Okay, thank you. So our next question. So New York State has a plastic bottle bill. Why doesn't New Jersey? And is that something the state should be working on?
Absolutely. The very first bill I ever worked on as a college student was getting the New York bottle bill passed into law. And it's pretty simple. It's a nickel deposit on soda and beer and plastic water bottles. And you pay the deposit when you buy it, and you get the nickel back when you return it. And there's been some real innovation. For instance, there are these reverse vending machines. So you've probably seen them if you've ever been in New York or a bottle bill state. When you have a whole bunch of empty containers, you just feed the vending machine. It looks like a soda machine, but you just feed the empty containers, and then you get a little coupon, and you redeem that when you're at the checkout. The great thing about the bottle bill is it really reduces litter. So you walk down the streets anywhere in New York, you are not going to see a bottle or a can, because everyone wants their nickel back, even though it's just a nickel. I mean, it was passed in 1982. It really should be increased. The other reason why the bottle bill is so important is because we get much higher recycling rates. You all probably recycle, and your community probably switched to something called single stream recycling, where all the recyclables are pushed all together. Unfortunately, there's a high contamination rate because people do what's called wish cycling. They throw in, for instance, all the plastics, number 1 through 7, or they toss in any kind of packaging that really isn't recyclable. So single stream recycling has kind of messed up getting lots of good quality material to actually get recycled. But with the bottle bill, if you put a deposit, just a 5-cent deposit, for instance, on an aluminum can, the recycling rate is 78%. If you put the aluminum can just in your recycling bin, the recycling rate is 36%. With a glass bottle with a deposit, the recycling rate is 64%. With no deposit, 14%. On a PET plastic bottle with a deposit, 59% recycling, as opposed to only 14% recycling. So you get source separated, cleaner material, and that stuff is actually going to get recycled. I think a really good follow-up to the New Jersey plastics reduction law is for New Jersey to pass a bottle bill. 9 states have it. New York has it, Connecticut has it, Vermont, Michigan, Oregon. There's no reason why the Garden State shouldn't have a bottle bill. It is opposed by the supermarkets. Sometimes it's opposed by the big soda and beer companies, but I think the time has come. And this would be a really nice follow-up to the New Jersey plastic trifecta law.
Thank you. So next we're going to talk a little bit about how COVID-19 has impacted environmental advocacy efforts on your end. So how has the pandemic impacted your outreach efforts, not just with this bill, but just in other areas of your work?
Well, from Clean Water Action's perspective, we haven't been able to send out our canvas since March. And that's kind of the backbone of our grassroots organizing work. So that's definitely been strange for us. Um, on the reusables front, there was the other issue that when the pandemic hit, a lot of people were unsure about the safety of reusables and, whether contact with reusables is potential spread. And so nationally, I know some supermarkets stopped allowing people to bring their own reusable bags, but it wasn't, across the board. There was just a lot of uncertainty. A lot of local coffee shops stopped allowing people to bring their own reusable cup, which, people are getting used to, and they're starting to build that habit in. But that all kind of stopped. But luckily in New Jersey, we were able to get the facts from the experts, start getting it out there. In New Jersey, I don't think there was any suspension of existing ordinances, local ordinances. And there were actually a few that passed during the pandemic, which was great, showing that, it wasn't going to stop people from keeping this moving forward. And, then ultimately we passed the state law during the pandemic. So that was great. But there was definitely a moment where we really weren't sure what was going to happen. But we actually, Clean Water Action put out a guide to the safety of reusables during COVID. So I can post that in the chat if anyone's interested in taking a look at that.
Yeah, the people might not know this, but the plastic industry is very cutthroat. I mean, they are defending their profits all the way, and there's a lot of examples of that. And this was just another one where they jumped out immediately and used the pandemic to, without any real evidence, try to say that reusables were unsafe. And so that was a big battle that I feel like we've kind of beat that back. But and then just on Surfrider's general, kind of like Mara's saying with the canvassing, our kind of step one into Surfrider is beach cleanups. We do about 1,000 every year. And so to not be able to do those was really just kind of demoralizing to people who like to get out and help out their communities and see their neighbors. And that's how we usually meet new people too. So that's been a bummer, but hopefully we'll be back out there soon. And some chapters are doing smaller cleanups now.
Yeah, I went to one of your cleanups in October.
Oh,
it was great.
you.
There were a couple students out there, but we all kind of spread out, making sure that everyone was socially distanced.
Thanks.
Okay, so our next question is more on so with an issue as dire as this, it's kind of easy to feel like there's nothing we can do about it. So what are some things that people can do on an everyday basis that can help reduce their contribution to the global plastic crisis? And I know like in the questions, we did have a couple more specific ones that we can answer after, but just on a broader level, like what are some things that people can do?
Well, I could name a few, and I guess you guys can add on. A couple things that come to mind right now in terms of individual changes. Right now, reusable masks disposable masks are starting to become one of those big single-use disposable litter items. And I know some people need to use them, which please continue to if you need to. But for a lot of people, we don't. And so if you can use a reusable one, that's great. Somewhere I read that studies estimate globally we use 129 billion face masks a month. So it's a lot. So if we can just make some of those changes, and then again, bring your own bag. It's safe. It's okay. Obviously, if you use it a lot, you can always wash it. If you're unsure, just get a nice washable one. I know a lot of people are ordering takeout right now, not going out to restaurants. So if you are ordering takeout, you can ask whoever you're ordering from, say, please don't add any extra utensils, straws, napkins, anything, because, you know, sometimes they do, even, you know, when they don't need to, because they're just eating at home. And I know that some online delivery services like Grubhub, there's actually an option built in, or you can request that in the notes section. So that's an option. I know a lot of people are, again, to avoid going to stores, they're ordering things online for shopping. So that comes with a lot of packaging. So rather than doing that, you can order for curbside pickup. That's another option. But I also want to emphasize that as much as we do as consumers to change our own behaviors, there's like 100 times more that needs to be done on the systemic level with what industry is doing. So yes, we want to be the good example of, you know, environmentalists that we are and try to do the right thing, but also make sure that we're not taking more of the blame than the industries that are more responsible for the larger impact on the planet that's happening.
Yeah, I really support absolutely everything that Maura said, and I think the word of the year is systemic. We want to address systemic racism. We want to address systemic environmental problems, and I totally encourage everyone to try to avoid plastics. I do. But a good example is, rather than me doing lots and lots of public education on the benefit of bringing your own bag to the store, I worked to pass the New York law that bans plastic bags. So New York State used most, if you tally up all the plastic bags used all over New York State annually, it's about 23 billion plastic bags a year. That's with a B. So putting some time into passing a state law is just so much more impactful. So we want to watch our own plastic footprint. Sometimes it's impossible. Don't beat yourself up. I mean, I'm super careful as a consumer, and I sometimes buy plastic because I don't have a choice. And it is definitely harder when you're doing your shopping online, which up until COVID, I tried to avoid. So we need to change the laws to make sure that they're more environmentally sustainable, rather than beating ourselves up for occasionally using some plastic. There's some really entrepreneurial companies that are out there. I started my holiday shopping this weekend, and I went to one site, and my family will love this. I got them like reusable bamboo utensils, so they can always avoid plastic utensils. I don't use plastic bags at the supermarket, but when you go to the produce section, you know, you put a couple peppers or apples in a plastic bag, you can now get these little nice reusable cloth bags for produce. I mean, everywhere you turn, there are opportunities. You know, the whole family get a reusable metal container from Clean Canteen. It could be red and green. So I'm just really paying attention, not especially this year, not to give really commercial overconsumptive products. So you do the best you can, and then you get active politically to try to pass local laws.
Yeah. Don't beat yourself up. You know, do as much as you can, but getting involved politically is even more powerful. I'll share the links to our local chapters if you're interested in getting involved with them. And then I saw someone asked a similar question, using paper grocery bags instead of plastic bags to throw out garbage. I mean, if any bag, you know, try to reduce the amount of single-use bags of any kind. But if you have it, like I said, if you have that Amazon bag that you don't know what to do with, use that as a garbage bag. But we want to try to reduce as many as we can. And really, paper, you know, Surfrider and most other groups are, you know, we don't want to just ban plastic bags, because paper bags obviously come from trees. They're heavier, so they take more fossil fuels to ship. So we don't want, and I'm glad New Jersey did move ahead and ban paper bags too, because you don't want everyone just to switch to paper bags, because that's happened in other states where they've just passed a ban on plastic bags. Everyone just moves to paper, and we haven't really solved any problems. So, you know, do the best you can and get involved.
So I'm going to ask one last discussion question before we move on to some of the questions people asked in the chat. So you did kind of touch upon this a little bit throughout the discussion, but if people want to try to be involved on a political level with the work you're doing, what is the best way to go about doing so and make sure that the things they're doing make them heard as a constituent?
Well, the first thing is to get informed, and there are a lot of good resources. I mean, my organization is one, so you can go to beyondplastics.org, but Maura and Matt's organizations also have a lot of good information. I started teaching my class on plastic pollution 4 or 5 semesters ago, and when I did the syllabus the first time, I had to really dig to get information. Now I can't keep up with it. There's so much data. It seems like once a week there's a new peer-reviewed scientific paper published, especially on microplastics. There was a paper published not long ago that looked at about 54 different studies on microplastic and concluded that we are all, each of us every week, we are consuming a credit card size worth of plastic. So this is my credit card, don't read the number, but in our body every week we are consuming a credit card worth of plastic. Microplastics is in drinking water, it's in beer, it's in honey, it's in salt, it's in the air we breathe, it's in food that we eat, including seafood. Types of seafood to avoid are things that you eat whole, like mussels or shrimp or oysters. So this is quite an emergency. Scientists also tell us that unless we change things like passing the New Jersey plastic reduction law or passing it at the federal level, unless the trajectory changes, we're looking at 1 pound of plastic in the ocean for every 3 pounds of fish. And that statistic is what got me really focused on this issue. We're turning our oceans into landfills. So check out Clean Water Action, Surfrider, Environment New Jersey, American Littoral Society, at the national level, Oceana, Plastic Pollution Coalition. We can give Sarah a list of groups. There's no shortage of information, but there is a shortage of people who are willing to take political action on this. So writing letters to the editor. Today we did a big call-in to Senator Gillibrand in New York. We got hundreds of people to call her to urge her to sign on as a co-sponsor to the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. You all can organize that in New Jersey. We'll share all the information with you, and you can urge your 2 US senators, Booker and Menendez, to sign on as co-sponsors. So, you know, we're not going to solve everything overnight, but if everyone does something, we're going to push this big boulder up the hill together.
Yeah, I agree with Judith. Stay educated as you all are by, you know, coming to this panel. And thank you to the library for organizing this. But stay educated and stay involved. And that includes at the smallest level. Go to your town environmental commission meeting. They're always open to the public, but people, I know, and at least in my town, that, you know, public don't always show up, but that, you know, they're not going to do anything unless they hear from you. So show up at your environmental commission and then go from there. Then keep calling your state legislators and, you know, build the grassroots momentum.
Awesome. Okay. So now we're going to go to some of the questions we had in the chat throughout this discussion. So to start, C. Rothrock asked, for society that uses a lot of single-use packaging that uses plastic, what would be a good alternative to plastic?
Well, I mean, we're trying to eliminate the plastic altogether, but there are, people are working on trying to, make packaging out of. I think there's mushrooms are becoming a pretty valid thing to make packaging out of. But really, we need standards. We need a standard packaging thing, so then we can figure out what to do with it. And that's going back to what Judith was talking about what's called extended producer responsibility, where it really puts the onus on the producers of this stuff to figure out what to do with it once you the consumer, has received it. So you're not getting 16 different kinds of plastic packaging in the mail. You're getting none, or you're getting one made out of plants, or you're getting one piece of plastic that is recyclable, like your plastic water bottle, your number one, and you can recycle it, instead of right now where you get this stuff in the mail or with your things you're buying, and there's no way it's ever going to get recycled. It's going straight to the dump. So
yeah, and I would add, some plastics are never going away. They're useful for, medical equipment, all of that. But when it comes to this packaging and single use, we need to start building reuse into our economy and into our way of life, and passing policies that incentivize it to make that a possibility, so that we can achieve that dream of a circular economy with reusable packaging, refilling bulk goods. It's already happening. I know some companies are testing out refillable packaging. We just need to make it more viable for everyone. And so it starts with policies that kind of make that a possibility economically.
So I just happen to have an example of what Maura is talking about. This is from a company called Blue Land. And you sign up with them, you get this this glass container, and then you get these little packets or soap. So it's hand soap, it's all different types of soap. It smells really good. This one is lemon. And so you add water, and when this is empty, you just get one of these little tablets in the mail. So, it takes a little organization, and there are all sorts of innovative businesses like that out there. I just want to point out that even without those extra steps, and even without innovation, an alternative to plastic are materials that have been around for a long time: cardboard, metal, glass. And it's important for people to realize that half of all plastics ever made were made in the past 14 years. So this is a contemporary issue that we can find solutions for. Definitely start with reuse and refilling. And then if it has to be single use, if it's made from recycled material, that's better. And a lot of cardboard, metal, glass can be made from recycled material, unlike plastic. It's very rare when you even recycle number one and number two plastic. It's very rare that it's recycled into another plastic container. It's downcycled, so it's often used in carpet or decking or some clothing, but not another container.
Yeah, and I actually did just want to add that even in New Jersey, there are some local businesses and stores that have refilling services. So it's even a lot cheaper to buy products you'd usually buy at the store, like detergent or shampoos and stuff, where you can just refill bottles without having to keep using plastic bottles at the same time. So another question in the chat. So what can we do with all of the plastic packaging with the deliveries?
I mean, like I said, a lot of it, you can't do much with it. I save some for Halloween costumes, but really this stuff just ends up having to go to the landfill. Like Judith was saying, wish cycling, where you throw it in the recycling bin and hope, if it's not one or two or whatever your local, some local people do up to 5, but it's just going to be thrown away. So there's not really a good answer there. If we have a hard stop at 8, I think we should talk about chemical recycling, but anyone else want to talk about packaging?
No, I was just gonna add, since I don't use disposable bags at the supermarket, any extra packaging I just use for my cat litter, just to try to use it again.
So yeah, I saw chemical recycling came up in the questions, and that's kind of become a buzzword. It's something the plastic industry is pushing, and we're at Surfrider just treating that the same as those biodegradable plastics. We're just saying, no, we don't want it. It's kind of a smokescreen. It's kind of pretending that plastics can be magically turned into other things, with this new solutions, and it's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and so we're against it. And I don't know if Judith or Maury have more details to my
No, I think you said it very well. We're always treated to these technological solutions that don't work. I mean, we've been hearing about chemical recycling for decades. It's actually an attempt to turn plastic into fuel, not into new plastic. That's what most of these are, waste to fuel facilities. Most of them are just news releases. They don't get built, they can't scale up. There's a very good report on the website of an organization called Grassroots Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives, and it deals with all of the problems with chemical recycling, waste to fuel, incineration, pyrolysis, plasma arc, gasification. They always have a new name, and they often do not work. I understand why the petrochemical industry is pushing this, because we do have a little bit of a conflict. We want to make less plastic, and that means less chemical sales and less hydrofracking. So there is that friction. So we've got to kind of stick with the basics. When you look at the various solid waste hierarchies put out by government agencies, the top of the pyramid is always reduction and reuse, followed by recycling, composting, landfill, and incineration. But in practice, the hierarchy is flipped upside down, and most of the money and the resources go to the bottom rungs of the hierarchy. So we really want to stay focused on reduce, reuse. And if you can't absolutely reduce and reuse, then make commitments to buying things with recycled content and recycle as much as you can. I'm glad Matt dropped that report in the chat. That is worth looking at. It's not a long report. Sorry, Sarah, you keep going.
Yeah, so I guess our last question will be, how can we push grocery stores to become zero waste stores?
We have a model letter on our website. I mean, I would say talk to the store manager, and they're going to say it's corporate. So we have a letter on the Beyond Plastics website, which is a model letter that you can send to your supermarket, asking them to reduce the offerings in plastic. There are a couple places around the world where there's a big push to at least have an aisle in the supermarket that doesn't have plastic in it. So maybe we start with the aisle and then we go for the whole store.
Okay, sounds good. So before we finish up, is there anything anyone else would like to add or ask or anything else? So thank you everyone for attending. We are going to post a video of this discussion on the library YouTube page, if I'm correct. And if you know anyone who might be interested in listening to this, or if you want to look back, definitely encourage other people to do so. This is a really important issue that I think a lot of people should definitely learn more about. Do you have anything else to add?
No, thank you so much for organizing this.
Yeah, it was a good turnout. Good job, Sarah. Keep at it. Tell us when you're running for office in the future so we can all volunteer on your campaign.
Will do. Okay, well, thank you so much for attending, everyone, and have a great evening.
Yes, thank
Thanks,
you very
Paula.
much, everybody. I will send out all those links in an email later this afternoon or later this evening or tomorrow.